The market is grotesquely overvalued. The strength on Wall Street is now driven by just printing and buying, no economy is necessary. The Fed goes pedal to the metal with their criminal manipulation of U.S. equities, as the first legalized Ponzi scheme in the world continues the greatest redistribution of wealth in history. This market is going to all-time highs and way beyond. You cannot shoot trillions of dollars into equities and not have it respond. I've never seen a market lying to itself like the current one. Bad news becomes good news on demand. More distrust in the moves is bullish. Ever heard the expression, bull markets climb a wall of worry? As long as the Fed keeps printing and dumping money into the financial markets, stocks of all types will go up. The instant it stops, there will be a huge collapse. Market cap to GDP is currently sitting at 186.9%, the highest ever recorded. It's up from 152% at the beginning of this year. By comparison, during the March lows, that figure dropped to 132%. Anything over 135% is considered significantly overvalued. And before the recent meteoric rise in this measure, the highest ever recorded was 138.4% during the height of the dot-com bubble. What I'm trying to say is, this market is hilariously overpriced. U.S. markets are so grotesquely manipulated and overvalued as to no longer be even recognizable anymore. When the reckoning comes, and it will indeed come, it will be historically catastrophic. America, you have let crooked and corrupt politicians destroy your country. Zero interest rates have destroyed the saver middle class. Over $5 trillion have been stolen from the middle class to subsidize the stock market via zero interest rates. Add this with the planned shutdown to boost the market share of the Amazons and Walmarts of the world while at the same time forcing mom-and-pop businesses to shut down. This also stopped the velocity of money, which was already at historic lows, allowing the Fed to print with little inflation. This is the mission of the Fed coming to fruition, to be the buyers and lenders of last resort. This is the new America where the banksters run the world. Welcome back to the Atlantis Report. You are here for your daily dose of the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Please take a second to click the like button. As many of you have asked me where they can buy silver and gold bullion. You will find in the description box the links where I personally buy American Silver Eagle, and silver bars and rounds. I highly recommend that you too start stacking some silver bullion for the future. Government printing presses were running a race with starvation, and failing. Atlas shrugged by Ayn Rand. Keep the presses rolling, there will be no more bread on the shelves. The Fed printing money and turning it loose in society can only be compared to drug lords making meth and handing it out society-wide. Soon, everyone is hooked. The Fed creates currency, i.e., bondage, and nature creates money, i.e., gold. And worldwide countries are printing like a drunken sailor and buying gold. Central banks are buying gold at a torrid pace because they know their scam is up. So they buy it now while it's cheap with counterfeit currency. When all currencies collapse, the value of that gold will skyrocket. All money is created by being borrowed into existence, owing interest. If everyone tried to pay all the debt, the money would run out before the debt was fully paid. This is a real-life algorithm, and it will inevitably lead to the lenders owning the whole planet. Fed criminals will change from paper counterfeit currency to digital counterfeit currency and want to make the transition seamless for the chattel. The US dollar is going to collapse, and the Fed criminals know it because they've engineered it, and we'll have hyperinflation globally. You'll fare better if you have silver and gold, since both are money and will appreciate exponentially at the time of the collapse. In our current age, money is just an electronic blip. It can move from one account to millions of accounts in a fraction of a second. The only thing that separates the wealthy from everyone else is the government. As the politicians and their cronies destroy the very systems that were built primarily to protect the wealthy, it also exposes them to the very real risk of losing all of their wealth. This could happen almost instantly. The government is currently overflowing with its own corruption. The government, now severely understaffed and filled with even more incompetent and corrupt people. In theory, if the central banks buy up all the stock in the critical companies, housing, farms, and eventually utilities, roads, and energy companies through government-sponsored entities like Fannie, Freddie, etc., then they become outright owners. When they own everything, then currency no longer matters. In the past, money implied the ability to have fractional ownership in the stock market. But as these giant entities like BlackRock act as go-betweens for the central banks to own everything, then the currency is mooted. If you own everything outright, then you can make up whatever currency you want, and that will be a digital currency that will be tightly controlled by the new owners. 97% of what people refer to as the money supply is nothing more than theory-induced figments of the imagination, which only exists as bank-managed, electronically manipulated accounting entries, aka bank deposit liabilities, that people use as a line of bank credit. And that line of bank credit is totally dependent upon the bank's ability to maintain accounting solvency, which, in turn, is dependent upon maintaining the asset values primarily created and controlled by the world's largest gambling operation, that is Wall Street. When this bank debit credit system fails, it won't be in a hyper-inflationary flare, but in a hyper-deflationary implosion where bank debt-based credit goes poof, out of existence, and all anyone will be left with are the debts. This will also mean that all of the commerce comes to a screeching halt, nothing moves anywhere. Do you know your chain of supply? Something to ponder. Those who control and run IMF, World Bank, IB. They have destroyed the world economies over and over again to meet their short-term, short-sighted goals. America and its constitution is the only hope for a free world, but its European American political leaders are too weak-minded, realizing the great God-given power which they wield. They have allowed the uncapped, unregulated capitalism to get the best of their soul. It's such a shame. Powell has lamented many times that the Fed does not have spending power. It can only lend. That balance sheet was created using reserves. It sounds like money. There is a store of value and a unit of measure, but they are not legal tender. Reserves just sit at the central bank. QE is nothing more than an asset swap. The Fed explains. But what about the credit facilities? You know, the special purpose vehicles, SPV, Powell and Mnuchin came up with to buy all that debt. Ah, yeah, those are loans. It's all debt. The Fed can't print money yet. That's all money, some in the form of reserves, some in the form of debt. The Fed, through QE, creates reserves on behalf of the banks in exchange for debt. Member banks use their own liquidity to buy debt. That debt is then sold to the Fed, but instead of giving the money to the banks, they place it in reserves on behalf of the bank. Those reserves are not legal tender. They cannot be spent. Even when corporate bonds wind up on the Fed's balance sheet, they still have to be serviced. It's not like the Fed forgives the debt. Reserves are created out of thin air. Money is lent into existence and destroyed when paid back. That's how a debt-based system works. The Fed does not have the power to spend directly into the economy. Fed Chair Powell mentioned this the other day. The Fed can only create reserves to lend against. If there is no lending, in excess of repayment, there is no money being created. Money is destroyed when loans are repaid. In a debt-based economy, the debt must expand beyond repayment for growth to occur. When we borrow, money is created in the economy. When the government borrows, they do so from existing dollars, thereby shrinking the amount of liquidity in the system. It's an exponential debt game. The reason QE worked before is that everyone believes it's inflationary. That causes people to spend and borrow. Powell even said the other day, forward guidance is our most powerful tool. i.e., getting you to believe something is our most powerful tool. QE is not going to work this time. What will? Making those bank reserves legal tender. In order for the Fed to actually create money and spend, the laws will have to change. For Congress to change those laws, they will need a historic monetary crisis. The Fed needs a massive deflationary event so Congress can sell this, reserves becoming legal tender, to the public. The real crash is coming. We are so broke the amount of spending needed is astronomical. We are headed into a complete economic collapse brought on by the central bankers of this world. They created money out of thin air and took tangible assets as surety, and gambled with the rest. Our currency is backed by speculation because the basis for the value of the currency lies not in the country's economy or gold or silver but by rates set by a few persons working with a select cartel. America printed over $150 trillion of totally unbacked currency. But that is now over. We have a bubble economy, bubble markets, and a massive bubble currency. The Treasury bonds are absolutely worthless now and are being rejected. The inflation is about to shoot through the roof, and the Fed is going to have to put interest rates to above 20% when the bubbles all pop. 2021 the USA will be a third world economy, and the military will no longer be affordable. How about the Fed even buying junk bonds? That, of course, is illegal, so they paid BlackRock millions to do it for them. No coincidence that Powell just happens to have a stake of over $11 million of his own personal, unearned wealth in guess who, BlackRock. BlackRock has so many ex-Fed maggots on its board that it seems to be turning into the damn Fed. The entire banking and big corporation system of the West is now as riddled with corruption as an old sideboard full of woodworm. It is beyond treatment. The people of the West are that sideboard being turned into dust by the worms of big banking and big corporations who bought the politics they wanted in order to escape any restraints on their conduct. Central banks have simply aided their looting of entire economies. The central banking cartel wants every possible country overextended. The problem, reaction, solution. One in which they can collect in hard assets and generational debt, aka slavery. The collapse of the current fiat system also opens the door for their Great Reset, biometrically controlled commerce, etc. Total control of the chattel is what the powers that shouldn't want, and they'll get it. This was the Atlantis Report. Please like, share, leave me a comment, subscribe. And please take some time to subscribe to my backup channels. I do upload videos there too. You'll find the links in the description box. You will also find a PayPal link if you want to make a donation. Thank you wholeheartedly to all those of you who have donated. Stay safe and healthy, friends.